Hello again, and welcome to this interview in the series that is all about inspiring and empowering a league of extraordinary mothers on how to rekindle that fire in your belly so that you can step back into life with more clarity, purpose, and excitement. Today, we have with us Lisa Fitzpatrick and Anna Davis. These two women have very generously come together so that we can look at the power of collaborating as women and look at how that supports us, not just in our personal lives, but in our professional lives as well. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Edwina.
So maybe, Lisa, I think what I'll do, rather than going into a big introduction, is get you to individually introduce yourselves, and if you can share a story of how you came to be doing the work that you do, then we will move in from there. So Lisa, perhaps if you could go first.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Lisa Fitzpatrick. I started Sacred Women's Business Coaching actually only 5 years ago, but it came from a very disastrous year in my life where I found myself in a Centrelink queue with two little boys, finding myself as a solo parent, wondering how the hell I got into this situation where my 12-year relationship was over. And I thought to myself, I don't know a single woman in my life right now who I can turn to for some kind of guidance. And it was a bizarre moment because I do have amazing women around me, but as far as a mentor, I had always wished for a mentor of some sort, and that was a defining moment for me. And I thought, if I can ever get my life together from this point of being a messy single parent in a Centrelink queue, completely lost in my life, I will become a worthy mentor to other women who are facing similar challenges. And it took me 9 years from that day to actually get a business, a coaching business together. And now Sacred Women's Business Coaching is my absolute passion. And I'm so happy that I didn't give up.
Oh. I think the world's happy you didn't give up. There's a lot of women, and really I think we all need mentors. We all need women that we're looking up to, and whether that's our teenage girls that need the aunties or those strong women in their lives that other than mummy, or as ourselves, as we move into different chapters in our lives, having mentors, having coaches, the power of it is really, really strong. It's amazing. Anna, if you could just introduce and let the audience know a little bit about you, that would be fabulous.
Thanks, Edwina. Well, yeah, so how I came to do the work that I do. Well, I am director of Bliss Baby Yoga, which is a well-known yoga teacher training organisation that specialises in women's yoga. So it's all about appropriating the traditional yoga practice that was created by men for men to a more feminine approach. So we do prenatal yoga, we do postnatal yoga teacher training, we do fertility yoga, restorative yoga, and more recently, menstruation and yoga for menopause. So yoga for all of the various phases of woman's life. So that's my passion and that's my life's work so far. So that organisation has been going for over 10 years, and it has really followed the trajectory of my own life. And it sort of happened organically since I got pregnant with my son 14 years ago. I have a 14-year-old boy, and started to get more and more interested in a whole different way of approaching yoga. So what I do fuses my passion for yoga and movement and embodiment practices, as well as my passion for feminism, for women's empowerment. I know that's a little bit of an overused word, but for ways to lift women up and support us, particularly in this post-Me Too world. So for me, it just happened naturally. I found that over the years, I've been practicing yoga my whole adult life since I was about 19. And my yoga practice has reflected the changes that I've gone through from being a busy, dynamic career woman in my 20s and 30s, and then to becoming a mother, and then a mother juggling a business. And like Lisa, I've also been through the solo parenting journey while also juggling this quite busy business over the last 10 years. So it's been an interesting journey in learning, and I'm sure we're going to touch on this in our conversation, how to really talk the talk and walk the walk of what I'm working with other women about, which is supporting ourselves with self-compassion and self-care in not just in our yoga practice, but you don't have to be a yogini or a yoga practitioner to have a lot of these ideas really benefit you in your daily life, and what we call yoga off the mat practice to support you as a busy mother and a mother in crisis like Lisa was talking about. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that that single parenting journey, and the we are in a culture now where it's really so many of us just are going it alone, whether it is in business or trying to start an entrepreneurial business, or whether it's in parenting, or whatever that journey is. There seems to be this real drive that we have to know it and get it right by ourselves. But so you coming together to do this interview, I really want to shine a spotlight or talk quite a lot about that power of supporting each other, whether it's professionally or personally. So if you can tell us a little bit about how you've collaborated on different things and the effect that that's had for you, even personally but professionally as well. Whether you both want to talk into that, I'm not sure which.
I might start if that's all right.
For sure, yeah.
Because the way that Lisa and I came together was through Bliss Baby Yoga, through the yoga teacher training business that I run. And Lisa is one of our most beloved guest teachers. Every woman that encounters her totally adores her. So Lisa is a woman with many hats. Not only is she a business coach, but she's also a very accomplished yoga teacher and, of course, a highly qualified physiotherapist. So she brings all of these amazing qualities to the yoga teacher trainings that we run, which are largely online these days, but also over the years there's been a lot of in-person trainings. So that's how Lisa and I have worked professionally, and that has reflected my whole value around working with women in the courses that I've run. So I bring in people like Lisa, experts in their field, women that are really passionate and really walking the walk and talking the talk, and bring them in to collaborate in the courses that I run. So for me, this is a real reflection of my vision for a feminine paradigm. And this is something that the students that have done our courses have really commented on, is that the way that I bring these women in. So it's not just me standing up and going, I'm the guru, I know everything. Because of course, I think the biggest lesson for anybody that has a public profile and is in some sort of teaching capacity is to know when to say, I don't know, because we don't know everything. Yeah. So I bring in people who do know. I don't know, but Lisa might know. Yes. So that's kind of how I've worked. And then, and I've had the feedback from the students that say what they really value about me is that I really talk up every woman that I work with. There's not a competitive element. There's an abundance element. And I really like to model that and work with that. And it just happens for me naturally.
Yeah.
So that's how Lisa and I came to work. And I'm sure Lisa will talk to that as well.
Yeah.
I just want to say most recently I launched my book, Moving with the Moon, Yoga, Movement and Meditation for Every Phase of Your Menstrual Cycle. It's my big 5-year baby. And Lisa has been amazingly supportive with the launch of this book, beyond the call of duty, just because she's a generous, loving soul, but also she totally embodies this as well. Like that constantly in her work uplifts other women. So I want to say that because she might not say it enough of herself. So we recently launched my book here in Byron Bay amongst my community, and it was a big deal for me to show my baby to the world. And I invited Lisa to be the MC and to interview me and it was the most amazing, supportive experience. Yeah. And I'm blown away by how that when you bring other women in, or and how generous her support was and how supported I felt, because that's also been my journey, is feeling like you have to do it alone, and then occasionally you're like, oh wow, it's actually so much nicer if I do it with somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. That idea of collaborating rather than competing is just gold. It needs to be a bumper sticker on every car, I think.
And we have this thing with women of the, this idea of it. I think it's quite entrenched maybe in Australian, but also American culture as well. I was recently in America and I did a poetry course, and I wrote a poem about sisterhood. And there was this, women really commonly identify with this this anti-sisterhood of how women are not, you know, they have this scarcity mentality. And so we're trying to reframe this as a much more positive way of being, because it really is entrenched in our culture, this competitiveness. And and a lot of women come to our courses, our Bliss Baby Yoga courses, and it's the first time in their life that they've sat in circle with women and felt supported by other women and felt that sisterhood.
Totally. Yes. Yeah. I do think that comes a lot from this, the masculine way, which, and when you think about hunter-gatherer societies, you know, the hunting mentality was a competitive mentality, and the whole business and legal and financial systems that we've been part of are all very masculine in nature. But with this feminine shift, you know, women were the gatherers. We did work shoulder to shoulder. We were always equals in the fields, gathering our herbs. And I think some of us have suffered from possibly this ancestral wounding that came about when the women who were accused of witchcraft were actually turned against one another because they needed to protect their own lives to do so. And so this idea of us healing that is just, for me, one of our generation's greatest gifts and opportunities for this era. So I love working with Anna because I know she understands this as well on this deep level.
Yeah, I think it works on so many levels, and whether that's, you know, consciously in the school car park, not discussing things that aren't positive, you know, about another mum might have this, or, you know, it starts there, right at ground level, doesn't it, and goes all the way up. And any culture where we have this kind of gossiping or tearing other women down, whether it's for dyeing their hair purple or choosing to vaccinate or not, or to private school or public school, or mums that work and mums that don't, or, you know, like there's always a reason to gossip about somebody else who's making a different choice. And, you know, whether it's even, you know, choosing different political alliances or whatever, religion or not really, you know, there's always a reason to say, well, you know, they this, so I'm, you know, let's start right at that ground level and just go, that's great. Isn't it amazing that we live in a culture where we have a choice?
Can I add to that, Edwina, by saying I believe it starts from our own self-dialogue.
Yeah, of course.
We're feeling about ourselves as women, because this is also something that we're trying to overcome.
Yeah.
The work that Lisa and I do, and so many of us are doing now, that is rising, is this self-cruelty in our thoughts, the negativity of our thoughts, and that is going to then reflect outwards if we're having an attitude of self-hate or bringing yourself down. So it starts with your very thoughts and how that radiates outwards, and that's very much a big part of the work that we do, I think.
Yeah, I think I've said in countless interviews throughout this series, it's all mindset. Everything that we're trying to do, it's how we, you know, it's the story that's churning around in here. And I know that any time I go to say something that's negative about somebody else, I know that it's coming from a place of you know, not feeling great, or it's, you know, like it's always a self-reflection piece.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so perhaps if we look at so you've talked about collaboration and how you do that and bringing women together in your businesses. Maybe if we look at, you know, certainly through your journeys as being single mums and having careers, one of the big pieces that often comes up for mums is burnout and how we address that. So maybe if we look at that now, does that work for you?
Beautiful, absolutely. Been there, done that, written a book about it. I actually have written a book about it.
Oh, perfect. Okay, Lisa, let's dive into that. How do you address, you know, avoiding burnout in your life and helping other women in your coaching role?
I think we've covered it beautifully in the collaboration part. I never ever could have created my business or had any level of sustainability without the support of my peers and the support of beautiful friendships like Anna's.
Yeah.
So for me, it is about, and the paradox is that when we're in fight or flight response or a stress response, we tend to be very much in a tunnel vision of the solopreneur. And solopreneurs are so busy trying to keep their head above water often that they forget to reach out to those support networks, because really when we're well resourced, that's when we connect with other humans.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a chicken before the egg thing. When we're feeling stressed, it isn't our natural instinct generally to reach out and feel social and feel connecting and to others. But my strategy has been, the minute I start to feel into my highly sensitive nature towards connecting with people, that's when I know I need to go and get my cup filled with even if it's just a chai with a girlfriend at a cafe.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other thing about burnout for me has always been this idea, again, it's a feminine shift idea, that instead of us continuously looking with an externally focused vision where we're actually looking at the world beyond us, we need to come back to our own internally resourced state regularly to check in with ourselves. And that requires us to sit very quietly and have the courage to actually do nothing and to be still. And I think that's a dying art, is the art of stillness. So I'm very passionate about supporting women to understand that they're not being lazy if they sit and just be, because beingness is a feminine quality, and it's one that if we don't spend time, we're always doing, we're always masculine in our external driven focus, we'll burn out pretty fast.
So how do you look at actually, on a practical level, incorporating that into a daily routine or a busy life?
Oh yeah, thanks. I have a regular sitting practice. I do that first thing in the morning and often last thing at night as well. I have a very overactive mind. I'm very over-intellectualized by nature. So for me, actually coming into a belly breath and understanding the core of where I am feeling the most center of gravity in my body, there's that still steady space within us all that actually can access it's a very quiet voice of intuition, but it's that guidance, I think, that is so benevolent that it would never see us in struggle or lack. It's a very loving force that we all have access to at all times, but we forget to tune into it because the world's built to distract us, right? It's never been more busy than it is now with information overload. How about you, Anna? What's your practice?
Well, very much what you're talking about there, Lisa. And I think a really key point is recognising your individual sensitivities. And that's been a big journey for me. And that's certainly become much more obvious to me throughout the journey of perimenopause, which is the lead up to menopause, which is the little known, still little talked about transition that can take a number of years for women before they actually reach menopause and no longer menstruate. So, and it's a time when your body becomes more and more sensitive, and you really need to take more and more care with what you eat, and most importantly with your stress levels and understanding. And like Lisa, I think I'd classify myself as a highly sensitive person. And I'd say a lot of people who do yoga are, because they're attracted to how yoga grounds you and takes you out of their head, like Lisa was talking about. So yeah, I'm a huge proponent of a daily practice. And that practice can look like a yoga practice, a feminine yoga practice, which obviously is what I'm a big proponent of in my work, but it can also be a walk to the beach. For me, it can take whatever form. It's not always yoga, some qigong on the beach. I do this practice where I take my cup of tea down to the beach and I just sit with my cup of tea. So it's not even a formal meditation. It's just, this is my beingness in my day. But can I also add, to extend on that, not only should it be a daily, but also not this this thing that should be another thing on your to-do list, because that's what it also becomes with women is, oh, it's another thing I have to cross off. And then your self-care becomes something which is self-punishing, which is totally counterproductive.
And then you get guilty because you haven't done your self-care for the day.
Or, like, if you're like me, I am fortunate to be quite disciplined. I do it, but I get to the end of the day and I go, oh, God, I've had a busy day. And I actually forget that I took an hour to do a yoga practice, but that felt like another thing that I had to do rather than something that was time out. But what I want to say also is this idea of not just a daily or just a regular, it doesn't have to be every day, but a few times a week at least, where we do something physical or some kind of space for ourselves, is to, as women, for those of us that are menstruating, to understand how our menstrual cycle cycles. It's called a cycle for a reason. It's not a line, it's not linear, it goes up and then we go down. So as we tune into our bodies more, and it's better to do it before we hit perimenopause, but throughout those, through our 20s and 30s, to understand that there are times in your month for activity and for dynamism and for that yang, masculine, getting things done and being out in the world. And there are also times for how we sort of started this part of our discussion, for that reflective, quiet time. And that is definitely when we're menstruating. And also when we're leading up to our menstruation. So I call that the waning moon and the dark moon phases of our cycle. So that's a huge gift you can give yourself if you can take that monthly break. It might not be the whole day off when you menstruate, although ideally we would suggest from this whole kind of holistic health approach that will really nourish you. I kind of call it like putting money in your energetic bank. By taking that time out, it's going to pay back in spades throughout the rest of your month. The discipline, it takes a lot of discipline to make yourself just stop, turn off the computer, turn off the mobile, don't respond to every email on that day. So it might just be, for me, I take a little rest on my bed and I read. One of my greatest joys is to read a novel for an hour. Or I'll do my yoga menstrual practice, or I'll take my walk, or I'll spend some quality time with my family. But usually it's my alone time, my journaling time, because it's the opportunity not just to have that daily check-in time, but that monthly where it's like, okay, so here I am in this point in my life, and here I am at this point in my month. It's like a rebirth. What do I want to let go of from the previous month? What do I want to embrace and move forward into? And this is typically done with a new moon, like a new moon practice as well. And it really is all part of this nourishing self-care and an embodiment of self-compassion that is so necessary for women so that we don't burn out, which is where we start this discussion.
I love that you just talked about letting go. What can I let go of in my month? Because although I haven't watched any Marie Kondo, and I know it's about, refining and getting rid of clutter, for me, it's also been called the medicine of subtraction, which is what can we release that isn't really supporting and serving us in a sustainable way. So and that doesn't necessarily have to be a tangible object in our lives. It doesn't have to be a decluttering of furniture and material things. It can also be a real purification process in our hearts and in our minds and in our souls about what is it that's no longer working for us. And it's interesting too that as humans we hold on to the past and recreate the past, not realizing that we've moved into this new phase of our lives quite often, and every decade we are almost transformed and renewed and reinvented. I love that idea that as women we can consistently reinvent ourselves. And I love the fact that Anna and I have taken this journey of parenting as well, and we're now in this teenage boy phase. And we've had to let go of all of those beautiful, cute years of playgroups and packing school lunches and it's a whole new phase. And if we were the same women, it wouldn't work. We have to become different women to rise to the challenges.
And on a daily basis as well, this idea of letting go, bringing it back to this idea of self-judgment, which we're so good at as women. And I know that through all the years of single parenting, you get exhausted because you've got no one to hand the child to, or very irregular, depending on your arrangement with your ex-partner. So you really have to keep going. So there are times where you are running on empty and your child is triggering you and you lose your temper and you feel awful, and you really beat yourself up. But that's also part of this practice of self-compassion in action, is to kind of go, okay, I stuffed up, apologize to your child, move forward. So this idea of letting go of, as you said, holding on to the past and kind of just working with this practice. To me, everything we do in life is yoga, because it's all a practice. And it's not a perfect. It's called a practice for a reason. It's not called a perfect. So that's what parenting is. It is the ultimate yoga of motherhood and parenting, where we really just have to let go. Okay, I wasn't a wonderful mother in that moment, but what do I want to move forward to? What is my vision that I want to move forward to with my children?
I love how that can be directly translated to business as well. And that, you know, we're so fertile as women with our businesses too. And if we can have a vision, and I think also, Anna, I love what you said about taking that time out when we're bleeding to vision, and at certain times of the moon to vision, because the red tent was always set up for women to do that visionary work for their communities. So in business, it's so important that we also have, you know, press pause and reflect and refine what it is that we're offering to the world, that genuinely and authentically reflects where we are currently at as business owners. Because if we don't do that, we also are at risk of feeling stale and burnt out, right? Because I believe this is like a beautiful life force energy that wants to consistently create new things through us. And that's another point that I wanted to mention, is that somehow the power of two women coming together the way Anna and I have, I believe so strongly that has resulted in this immense richness and fruit that could never have come about if we'd tried to do these particular projects that we've worked on together solo. You know, it just wouldn't have had the same kind of sustenance to it. So for instance, a recent collaboration we did on an online course, I just feel so grateful that two hearts coming together can be so much more powerful, and 1 + 1 definitely doesn't equal 2. It equals so much more than that. And I love that part of the collaboration process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, going back to that, that working with the cycles, I'm thinking about my business coach, Shanda Sumpner, whose interview is part of this series, but she takes a week off every month. Now, I don't know that she's actually timed it in with her cycles, but I do know that that's because she's such a profoundly busy businesswoman. She does that to give herself feminine time. So that is her time for her. She talks about, you know, having lunch with girlfriends or getting her nails done, or it's pamper time. It's time for her and her child, and, you know, like, it's her feminine time. And so she's been really deliberate in setting that up in her life, and that's just ties into what you're talking about. And it's, you know, I think that time out from business absolutely is so important, which is what she's talking about there. But time out from motherhood, and, you know, whether that's an hour or two that we can grab here and there, but to give ourselves that breathing space is so critical in avoiding burnout and avoiding resentment for never being able to stick your head up and see outside that busyness of life. I think it's, you know, I attribute it to being just as important in our daily motherhood role as in business. Absolutely.
Yes.
So as single mums, where do you find that time to stick your heads up from motherhood and business?
Early mornings.
Yeah, me too. Between 5:30 and 7:30. That's me time.
That's your time. Yes.
Yeah.
And also, I think we forget the power of 1 minute.
Yeah.
You know, 1 minute to breathe into our abdomen and not into our chest.
Yeah.
Just 1 minute to take a glass of water and actually really, you know, drink it with full mindfulness.
Yeah.
I think we can make it more complex. We can fill our cup even by just doing our dishes mindfully and slowly. It's something that's taken me as a busy thinking person a long time to learn. That idea of being embodied and mindful and present is a sustaining kind of way of being in the world, no matter how busy you are as well.
Yeah.
I tend to always, my fight or flight response is activated very quickly and often, because I believe as a child being raised by a Vietnam War vet, some of us were raised with heightened nervous system, tension. And so we're sort of naturally set that way. And so, like Anna said, we get drawn to these practices that will help us heal that. So a lot of us are called to yoga, etc., for that reason. But there's reasons why mindfulness is such a huge trend or craze or whatever, because it's so effective.
So for me, totally I agree with Lisa, as well as just really consciously making time for pampering, getting that massage. I try to get a massage once a month, trying to get that walk to the beach, to have time in nature. But also for me, what is the extra icing on the cake with mindfulness, I've really been working and really getting some fruitful results from this idea of mindful self-compassion. So it's combining self-compassion with mindfulness. And I recently studied with two amazing academics in the US, Dr. Christopher Germer and Kristen Neff, and they're one of the proponents of this, what's called mindful self-compassion. It's a huge movement, particularly across the US at the moment and spreading around the world. And I find particular value with working with this practice in my parenting, because that's, for me, that's my personal nemesis, is parenting. And I'm sure many women identify with this, the way, as I was talking before, the way we beat ourselves up when we're not this ideal version of what we want to be. And maybe for me it's magnified. Having only one child, there is this kind of intensity, because you've got this one chance to try and bring this mindful, wonderful person into the world, because that's how we live our lives, and we'd love to have our child be a mindful, thoughtful person. So for me, it's the mindfulness, first of all, to realize, okay, what's going on. And what we do in mindful self-compassion is acknowledge, this is a moment of suffering. I'm feeling stressed, or I've just had this fight with my son. And first of all, for me, it's been a huge aha moment, and really ties into the feminine practice that I work with, because my way of navigating myself is to just go, is to be a fix-it, is to be, and I've got my own childhood reasons for that, and where I will go forward and I will just be the one who fixes it. I go straight, if there's a problem, I go straight into fix-it mode, which has a lot of value, particularly in business. It really does drive things forward when you're really good at the troubleshooting. But also, as we've been talking about, there are times when we need to actually move out of that masculine mode and more into the feminine mode, which is actually to go, there's a problem. And for me, it's been huge to realize there's a problem, but do I have to fix it right now? Can I just sit with it and just acknowledge it and feel it? That's where the self-compassion comes in. So if you give the example of, I'm having an argument with my son, teenage boy, it's many come along at the moment, and I kind of go, this is a moment of suffering. I've just yelled at him, or he's just yelled at me, and he wants to go to this party, and I don't want him to go to this party, or whatever it is, and I sit with that. And often when I sit with that, because under a hard emotion is often a softer emotion. So underneath the anger is often grief. And fear. And a lot of grief around, I've been doing this for a long time, single parent, and this is hard. And then this ties into this idea we were talking about before about reaching out. So often what we do when we're in fight or flight, when we're in distress, we feel really alone. And we think we're the only one having this problem with our 14-year-old teenage son, as if we would be the only one having this universal problem of raising a strong-willed young boy in this internet-soaked world, And so for me, it's been really beneficial to take that step back, to go, okay, this is really hard for you. And you actually talk to yourself as if you are a loving friend would talk to you. So you become your own inner loving parent and friend. So this is, for me, it really extends and enriches this idea of mindfulness. And really another important element, I'll just finish by saying, is they talk about this idea of common humanity. Because what we can tend to do is we shut ourselves down. So when we've just had this difficult situation, And it happened for me recently when we had a disappointment and I was about to go to the farmers markets, and we live in a community where you're likely to see plenty of people that you know and you want to have your happy face on and everything. So I took some time to do a mindful self-compassion practice because something stressful had just happened to me before I went out into the world. And normally I would go out into the world feeling really fragile and really alone and really shut down and kind of pretending everything was okay. But people would know, anybody who was perceptive would know, oh, Anna's sort of being withdrawn at the moment. But when I took that time for really self-compassion and to realise, oh, I'm not the only mother going through this. All mothers suffer, all people suffer, all beings suffer. Yeah. This brings in this idea of common humanity. So, and then this makes you more receptive to reach out, and when you talk to someone and they say, how are you, Anna? To go, actually, well, I'm actually really not great. You know, this just happened, to share our vulnerability and then to bring someone in. And Lisa and I had the instance of that recently where I came to visit her and she was going through a tough time and she shared that with me and shared her vulnerability, which always brings people closer rather than shutting ourselves off and trying to be this incredible superwoman. So for me, these levels of the mindful self-compassion have really helped in all areas of my life, but particularly with parenting.
I've got a fantastic, funny story too that I love to tell about. I went through Anna's Moving with the Moon yoga classes for several weeks to road test some of the ideas in her book, and every start of every class that we did, Anna would let us check in, and one week I came to class just saying, I am feeling so black today. I feel dark, I feel angry, I feel irritable. I just was almost scary to be around. and Anna sort of took one look at me and said, day 18 of your cycle. I'm sure you're on day 18 of your cycle. That's the day Carly comes out. We feel ropeable, we feel irritable. And in that moment, I stopped making myself wrong, because the hardest thing about being in that state was making myself wrong for it and not even thinking, oh, maybe my menstrual cycle's just giving me a reason to actually reflect on something and to let Carly, you know, the goddess of war, actually have her way. To burn off something that's no longer necessary. And yeah, it just really speaks to that common humanity of, wow, every woman goes through these times of their cycle. We don't even realize it's our cycle half the time. We blame ourselves, we think it's something external, and gosh, that was a relief that day.
And it's so important with premenstrual symptoms, PMS, because so many women suffer from it, and it only gets worse usually in those early years of perimenopause. I was just talking to one of my best friends about it, and she's going through a really tough time where she only has really 1 week out of the month where she feels kind of happy at the moment. This is a common story, but it's really helping her, and it certainly helped me when I was going through that, to just acknowledge, oh, I am premenstrual, and to give it a name, and to actually say to your partner, and this is where the awareness comes in, because you have to recognize it in yourself before you can then enlist other people and educate our men. This is really important to say, I'm premenstrual. Please don't take anything I say personally right now. Please give me some space, because often the best thing you can do for yourself premenstrual is to have that reflective me time. Often it's your body crying out for time. You were talking before about creativity, Edwina. It's a wonderful time to do creative pursuits and to do that more introspective time every month. And that will actually diminish the premenstrural symptoms. But yeah, often it's just that awareness will make a huge difference for women and for everybody around us as well.
I love what you said too, Anna, at the book launch, that even if you're a menopausal woman tuning in or postmenopausal woman, you will still have the fluctuations with the moon in your cycle. So there will still be some degree of influence that the moon has on us, whether we are, you know, bleeding or not.
Or we can use the moon. I kind of suggest that we use it as a metaphor and use it as a device. And it's like you're talking about, Edwina, about your mentor and how she takes that 1 week off every month. We can use the moon as a template to remind us to go, it's waning moon, which is typically when people's energy declines. It's typically when we start to move inwards, and then new moon is when we take that reflective intention setting time. So we can actually use the moon to do that and to put money back in our energetic bank. no matter where we're at in our cycles as women.
Love it.
Yeah. I always like to just kind of stress a little bit how important our health is in this whole picture as well. Yes, we cycle, and yes, all these things are happening, but I know for myself, when my health is not as good as it should be, then the hot flushes and those things are happening. But when my health is on point and I'm really doing really well, I don't have any of those really negative. Yes, I cycle, and yes, things are sometimes more of a challenge than others, but I don't have those extremes. And I think that's but that's another whole conversation. That's another whole conversation. But I think that, absolutely, that self-care piece really is looking at how much we're sleeping and moving our bodies and eating, and like all these, I talk about them as the foundation pieces. They're the foundations that keep us strong.
Yeah, our menstrual cycle is our stress sensitive system. It really is very in the mind chart.
Yeah.
And really mindfulness when we are not balanced in how we're living our lives.
Yeah. So unbelievably, we are just about through our time. These sessions always go so quickly. I have been asking each of the speakers in this series to share with us their ideal morning routine on a perfect day. So Lisa, first up, would you like to share with us on a perfect day what your morning routine looks like?
Goodness, recently I've been puppy sitting, and I've had some of the best mornings of my life, because the puppy wakes me up at the crack of dawn, and then we'll head down to the beach and enjoy the beautiful ocean at that time of the day. And I just think a puppy has been one of the best gifts for me to stay completely in the moment and playful. So normally if I didn't have a puppy around, I'd be doing a sitting practice, but having attempted that with a puppy pouring at you is a little bit difficult. So that's me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anna?
But yeah, I alternate between, I get up early most week, but every weekday. And now that my son started a new school and he has a very early bus he has to catch, so I get him up off to school, and I do my practice. I have my hot lemon water, and I do my practice at home. So I'll do a yoga practice at home, and then I'll have my chai, and that's when I'll have some family time with my husband, or I might start to check emails. So then on alternate mornings, we're so fortunate we live like 5 minutes walk away from the beach. Yep. And so I'll often take my chai, as I was saying, down to the beach, and I'll either go for a long walk, or quite often I will sit and finish my chai in my thermos mug at the beach. And I will do some embodiment practice. I'll do some qigong, some feminine yoga. I'll just do my own version of movement on the beach. It's nothing dramatic. It's not even a salute to the sun. It's just movement and moving the energy in my body and being in nature. It's just, it sets me up for the best day. And to do that every day, I've actually found it really helpful too with the menopausal weight gain, which is really common. And I started to realize, oh wow, I have been heavier than I've ever been, and I'm really used to having a very non-fluctuating body weight that's been in a really healthy range. And early this year I was like, oh wow, I've put on 5 kilos. And so re-establishing this morning routine, because I've now finished writing my book, which was 10-12 hour days where sometimes the morning routine got thrown out the window, has been so helpful in balancing my weight again. Wow. And so often these simple things which feed you on so many levels really support you. Yeah.
Beautiful. I know you each have a little gift for our audience. Have you got just a quick minute to tell us what that is, Lisa?
Sure. I have a free video e-course at lisafitzpatrick.com.au. It's 5 steps to a feminine shift for more time, ease and abundance. And who doesn't want that?
Yes.
And it is a video course that will arrive in your inbox daily if you sign up for 5 very easy, pragmatic ways that we can experience this shift that we all need as women to maintain our sustainability.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa. Anna?
And my gift is a free ebook. It's called Moving with the Womb, not Moving with the Moon. So my book is Moving with the Moon, but also I have a free ebook that's available with the link that Edwina will provide on my website, blissbabyyoga.com. And the free ebook is called Moving with the Womb and Keys to a Feminine Yoga Practice. So it's offering some of the key guidelines and ideas behind what I've been mentioned in this talk about how to adjust your yoga according to what you're going throughout your life as a woman.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and for offering so much wisdom. I know that there's many women who are going to be tuning in and will get a lot from those gifts. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Edwina.
Thank you.
All right. Bye for now.
So great to connect. Thank you.
Thank you.